Small Railway Engines is the 22nd book of the Railway series, first published in 1967. It was written by the Reverend Wilbert Awdry and illustrated by Mr. and Mrs. Peter Edwards. 50 years later, 3 of the book's 4 short stories were adapted during season 20 of Thomas and Friends. First broadcast in 2017, this is the most unique batch of adaptations from this series, as unlike all previous adaptations of the Railway series stories, they were produced during Thomas and Friends' CGI era, making them the only stories taken directly from the original source not to be recreated via a model train set, the only adapted stories to have a length longer than 5 minutes and 30 seconds, and the only one of Wilbert Awdry's books to be produced for television after Awdry's death, and without the input of Britt Allcroft and David Mitton. Anyway, how faithful were these adaptations? Let's spot the differences. The miniature engines who debut in the book are based on the Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway located in the English county of Cumbria, which Awdry acknowledges in the foreword of the book. Technically, all 4 of the book's stories were adapted, however the first story, Ballast, only incorporates the introduction of Rex, Bert and Mike. Donald and Douglas are helping to replace the old ballast from under the tracks with fresh stones, which they collect from a line on the island that none of the other Fat Controller's engines have ever steamed on before.
Their wee engines bring the ballast down for the hills.
Curious to see the very wee engines for himself, Duck asks permission to fetch some stones on this new line, and this is where he meets the small engines. The remaining 4 out of 6 pages are taken up by the Great Western Engine, learning all about the island's new railway line and its truck-shaped coaches.
I like being blue. It's all right for you, fumed Mike. Passengers will say I look like a pillar box. Consider my feelings. When we were both green, passengers kept calling me Mike.
In Thomas and Friends, the small engines are introduced during an hour-long special, Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. Rex, Bert and Mike pop up a few times during the film. They sing a song to Thomas and help stop a pirate. Marion, a steam shovel created for the television series, believes they must have magic powers, which was probably taken from the book, as it is said that Donald and Douglas have convinced James and Henry that the small engines must be some sort of supernatural entity.
I don't believe it, said Gordon. Donald and Douglas have pulled our wheels before.
Tit for tat.
The episode begins with a short profile of the miniature trio, followed by the introduction of the thin and fat clergyman. Although never named, these characters are the author himself and his friend and fellow railway fanatic, the Reverend Edwin Boston. The men are not even nicknamed in the adaptation, referenced only as special visitors. A scene between Thomas and the camera-carrying clergies was added to give the tank engine his mandatory screen time, to help pad the episode's runtime, and to establish the wet weather the day before their visit to the Arsdale Railway, which will play a part in the episode's plot. The next morning is when the 2 sources merge.
We've got visitors today. We have them every day, but these are special. One takes moving pictures, and the other writes books.
In the book, Bert's fire is being drawn with the aid of an attachable chimney, which is not used in the adaptation. The author states that Bert's driver, Rex and Mike tried to explain to the small blue engine the concept of photography and film cameras, but in the adaptation, everyone just laughs at Bert and ignores his pleas for clarification. Bert's driver offers the clergyman to join him in the engine's cab during the trip down the line, but they decline in favour of driving alongside the train in their pink car, allowing them to pick the perfect picture spots. In the episode, it is Bert who gives the special guests this invitation, which they pass on for the same reason. A minor illustration to adaptation difference is that Bert's driver, like the clergyman, wears glasses. Bert is pulling only 3 coaches in the episode, but in the illustrations he has several. The fat clergyman accidentally drives their car through a puddle, causing muddy water to splash onto Bert. Unlike the book, Bert's driver does give the engine's face a quick clean once they stop at a station. Bert thinks the visitors splashed him on purpose, and so gleefully decides to get revenge by using his steam to shake rainwater from the trees above the track to pour down on the fat clergyman and his driver.
Tit for tat. What? Tit for tat. What's that for?
I thought you said tip me hat.
Come on.
Bert is told off by the small controller, who is standing alone at the platform, indicating that the blue engine has left his train and passengers at another station and is puffing back to his shed. In the illustration, the small controller scolds Bert in front of the clergyman and the passengers. However, he later tells Rex and Mike that the thin and fat clergyman not only apologised to him, but cleaned the mud from his boiler and promised to write a book about the small engines. In the adaptation, rather than Bert just telling Rex and Mike this, we are shown the scene Bert describes, with the addition of the blue engine saying he might even get to be on television one day.
Mike's whistle.
Thomas is collecting ballast and tells Rex about Duck's faulty whistle, caused by his driver boiling an egg on it, whereupon the Great Western Engine himself arrives at Alsborough West Station with a passenger train. Thomas does not appear in the book, and it is Duck who is fetching the ballast. The next page takes place the next day outside the engine's shed, but in the episode the small engines are talking by the station, just as Thomas is leaving with his trucks.
If engines can't whistle properly, they shouldn't try. Then why do you? Asked Bert. Listen, Mike, said Rex. If I had a whistle like yours, I'd lose it.
What?
Mike loses his temper, causing his safety valve to loosen, so the small controller tells Mike to take the day's passenger train, while Bert will take his goods train. This oddly comes across as if the small controller feels that the safety of freight is more important than the safety of humans. In the book, it is Mike's driver who decides he should pull the first train of the day, which just so happened to be a passenger one. Mike rudely bumps the coaches at the station in the book, but in the adaptation he instead makes Rex jump by whistling at him as he rushes past. Mike's persistent use of his whistle during the journey worries his driver, and so at the station at the end of the line he examines his engine, but can find nothing wrong.
I just can't seem to work out what's wrong with you today.
There's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. Just don't go thinking about cooking an egg on my whistle.
This expansion of dialogue continues as during the return journey the driver comments that he can hear something on Mike's boiler is loose, which in the adaptation Mike refutes, but once again did not respond to in the book. Mike is stopped in his tracks by a cow on the line, who is black and white in the episode but brown in the illustration. Mike's loose whistle is blasted far and away into a field. The small red engine calling the animal stupid in the book was changed to silly in the adaptation. The passengers offer to provide the necessary whistling the engine needs to continue down the line safely. The cow that caused this predicament is not mentioned again once Mike shoots off his whistle. In the adaptation, the cow continues to block the track until the passengers whistle at her. When an embarrassed Mike arrives at Alsborough, Duck is waiting at the station, and Thomas returns for more ballast.
Take no notice. It's an improper engine. It's got no whistle. How shocking. We don't approve of his sort, do we?
In the book, the small controller scolds Mike for losing his whistle and for being such a crosspatch, and tells him to go work in the quarries for the rest of the day. The story ends with Rex and Bert teasing the red engine in the shed that night, while in the adaptation, this mockery at Mike's expense happens just after he returns with his passenger train, and the whistleless engine does eventually start laughing at his comeuppance. This story was loosely adapted back in Season 6, replacing Mike with Duncan, the cow for Terence, and the passengers with a pipe organ.
Useful railway.
The episode's beginning is once again padded out with an appearance from Thomas, whose passengers mock the size of the miniature engines, which offends the easily angered Mike. The book's story starts with Mike being held up by another type of farm animal blocking the line. This incident is told to us in the past tense, while in the episode we see the sheepish hold-up as it happens. Mike is pulling trucks, but in the illustration he has a passenger train, and the sheep have horns.
Sheep are nothing but trouble. I don't see the point of them, silly things.
People make clothes from wool. You know, things they wear instead of paint.
Rex assures Bert and Mike that collecting wool will be easy work, and so the small controller tells the small green engine that he can be the first to pull a train of it. In the episode, Mr. Duncan, aka the small controller, tells his engines about their woolly assignment at night to begin collecting it from the farms the next day. The time of day or passage of time is not stated in the book, so we are to assume the events of this story all occur within the same day. Rex describing the job of pulling trains full of wool as easy peasy twice does not happen in the book. Willie is said to be a farmer in the adaptation, but in the book he mentions his master, suggesting he is a farmhand or apprentice. It is not said who warned Willie his load was unsecure in the book, while in the episode it is said by a peddling author. Willie's tractor is blue, not green in the illustration, and appears to have a face. Also, he is right next to the line when the large blocks of wool fall onto the track, which was changed to a slight slope between the road and the rails. Rex crashes onto the bales of wool and comes off the rails. In the book, he didn't have enough time to stop, as the line curved, preventing him from seeing far enough ahead. Plus, his trucks were troublesome and pushed against him. In the adaptation, Rex should have seen the wool on the line in plenty of time, as the track was straight, giving him a better view at a longer distance. In the illustration, Rex's driver's clothes are torn, and he shakes his fist at Willie. Rex acknowledges he was overconfident, which in the book he describes as being swanky. Bert and Mike apologise for laughing at his accident, whereas in the adaptation, Mike points out Willie is entirely to blame. The final story ends with the small controller congratulating his engines on the day's work. In the episode, the customers who wanted the wool delivered are also at the platform to say thank you to Rex, Bert and Mike.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.